Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Shred's Takes. I'm Mike Shredder. Joining me today is my teammate at Amherst, Ryker Vance. He's from Naples, Florida. And we're going to talk about the Miami Heat. We're going to talk about the NBA Finals a little bit. So, Ryker, thank you for coming on to the show. Glad to have you on for the first time.
Hey, Shred, man, it's a pleasure. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. So I'm excited to talk about some basketball today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, look, you're a Heat fan, right? Obviously, if people can't tell, he literally has a Heat banner right behind him. He's and a Miami shirt on. Yeah. So obviously, look, great year for the Heat. Tough loss in Game 7, but I think there's a lot of things you guys can take away or good parts of the season, obviously. And I'll ask you about that in a second. But I think for me, at least, I look at it and say Jimmy Butler has proven that he's an elite level player. I've always been a Jimmy Butler fan. I've always thought he is really underrated. I don't think people respect about how good he is in the playoffs compared to his regular season. I think when you look at the regular season numbers, obviously 21.8 points a game, and then he averages like 28 in the postseason. Obviously people don't always, see that, but I think that, look, I think they're one piece away. And I really think that, he had to carry a little too much of a load at the end. I think he did a great job. He has nothing to hang his head about, but I think for Miami, obviously, I think, look, you have Kyle Lowry, he's a little older and he's not always in great, in terms of his health. I think Bam is a great third option. I think, because he's not aggressive all the time, but when he is, he's very good, but he consistently, he's great defensively, but offensively, he comes and goes. I heard about the Donovan Mitchell pitch that people are thinking about, which would be interesting. But my thing is the real point I want to make, and then you can jump in and tell me what you think. But I think it proved this year that, it proved to the analysts at least that Jimmy Butler can lead a team to a championship. He can be that number one option. I think a lot of people are saying no, he can't, and I think that's a lot of BS. I do, just because they said that, then he goes in Game 6 and gets 47. So I want to hear your thoughts about the season. Obviously, you follow them a little more closely than I do, but this is a great year for them. I think it's a big building block in a good direction for their organization.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man. As a Heat fan, I'm very proud of our team. Very happy with how far we went. A lot of people were doubting us at the beginning of the year. As you said, you really hit the nail on the head, saying that Jimmy might be like a 1B option for a championship level team, but I think this postseason he really just proved that he can be the number one. He just needs more of a supporting cast, and as the Miami Heat just have to give him that. I think you made a good point about Bam. I think he's a great third option in the NBA. He's an elite defender. He can go out there and give you 20 and 10 on any particular night. He can also go out there and give you like 10 and 5. So we need someone a bit more consistent in that second player role if we really want to take the next step and contend for a title. And I think it was a very similar story to a couple years ago in the bubble. Jimmy Butler just ran out of gas. And I think if we had made the finals, if we did win Game 7 against Boston, I think he would have ran out of gas again. I think the Warriors would have just overpowered us. So, I'm happy for the Celtics, and obviously they're doing well. I know we'll talk about that a little later, and I'm excited for Game 2 tonight. But yeah, we just need a little bit more help. I mean, some of the guys, we have a lot of good role players. The Heat have to do a great job of finding undrafted talent and really developing guys to become elite players. But we just need one more piece, man. And that if we get that piece, we can really be dangerous.
Yeah, I think the one thing I have a little bit is in terms of the cap space, it's tough for them right now to go get a big star without trading a bunch of their assets.
Yep.
Which obviously, look, I know in terms of trading for top players, that's what you have to do anyway. But the Kyle Lowry deal, the fact that he got a lot of money, and look, he deserves it, right? Kyle Lowry's been a really good player in this league for a long time. I think he had he had a pretty bad postseason, I would say, overall. The Game 6 against Boston, he was fantastic, but obviously the hamstring was bothering him. I think he's a lot older now than he was, and his leadership, his toughness. Look, that's what Miami is. But I think that obviously people were hinting at maybe Embiid would want to go play with Jimmy Butler, but that's just I think that could eventually happen. I just think that if you're Miami, you have to give up so much to get a guy like that, right? And Donovan Mitchell with his contract, there's just a lot. I agree that I think for next year, it's about trying to build in the draft, get good pieces that you can fit into that Spoelstra-Riley system. And then trying to I think developing more shooters, having Strus develop a little bit more. He had a great year this year, being that role player. I think you keep PJ Tucker because just his grit, his toughness, his defensive tenacity. And I think also Hero's just got to take another step. Hero had a great year as a sixth man. But in the playoffs, he really did fall off. He got injured at the end, which was unfortunate. But I think that I think unfortunately due to their cap space, you have to would have give up a lot. And I think also they have to find a way to put Duncan Robinson a little bit more in the rotation. I know defensively he's a liability, but I look and I know Strus is a better defender. That's why Strus played more. But Duncan is just a great shooter, and like just spelling minutes with him, I think when they did that, they actually had some success because his off-ball movement is just better in my opinion than Strus's. But look, Strus is an overall better player, 100%. Strus can drive to the basket. Strus is a better defender. He's stronger. He's more athletic. But obviously, you pay Duncan Robinson $90 million, so and you don't play him. That's just, I think you got to look for guys in that sort of draft role. I don't know what your thoughts are about it. Do you think that Miami still can, do you think there's anybody on their team that you would trade to get a star, or do you think they need to build the draft and then try to, take a run at it the following year?
Look, as a Heat fan for a long time, I'm kind of the guy that's just all in. So I'm totally willing to trade whatever is needed to be traded in order to get someone that we really need to take that next step. Because I mean, when you have a culture that Miami Heat have, I feel like it's kind of championship or bust at this point. Like making the Eastern Conference Final, especially this year, was great, but I think we have the potential to really become that team, the team in the East. So I would be willing to trade a Hero. I'd be willing to trade a Robinson, a Strus. That's just me personally. I know a lot of Heat fans out there would be like, no, never. So I think this year, this offseason for the Heat is either whatever way we go, I think we'll be successful. Like you said, we could build through the draft. We can really develop our players. We can have Strus become an even better shooter. Like you said, one of the most frustrating things about this postseason was Duncan Robinson. I mean, you mentioned a 90 mil contract. I mean, he's a great player. He was a great find, diamond in the rough. He can shoot the heck out the ball. He is he's a below average defender, but he's not a traffic cone. He can get out there and play. His off ball movement is great, and he really spaces the court for us, especially when we kind of needed that, to open up the paint for a Bam who had trouble really scoring, especially against the Celtics. So I mean, whatever route we take, I have confidence in Spoelstra. I have confidence in Riley. I think we're going to be even more successful next year. But when you look at the East, man, I mean, the Nets are going to be another year of chemistry. They still have KD, still got Kyrie. The Bucks, they're not going anywhere. Giannis is the best player in the league. He's probably going to be the best player in the league next year. And then of course the Celtics, they might win it. They might win it all this year, and that momentum's just going to carry over to next year. So I think if we really want to compete and we really want to have a chance, I think trading or somehow acquiring a star through our cap space is going to be the way to do it. Lowry was great this year, especially during the regular season. People kind of forget, like, he did have a lackluster postseason, but during the regular season, not only his leadership off the court and just the mentality he brought to our team that always helps the young guys, but he was hooping this year. He really was. As a starting point guard, we overpaid for him a little bit, but like I said, I mean, that a lot of that money goes to the intangibles that he brings just as a veteran in this league. I mean, and I think that hamstring really just hurt him. He just couldn't get his rhythm back. It was you could see it. It was clear. And I think a kind of unsung hero this series was Gabe Vincent. I really liked what I saw out of him. He's our backup point guard for people who don't know. And he just, every time he came to the game, he kind of gave us a spark off the bench. And even the games that Lowry was hurt, he played pretty well in that starting role. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited for his growth as well. And I think I would trade for a star. I try to get a Mitchell. I mean, I don't know. Embiid is obviously kind of way out there, but I think Mitchell is attainable. I think there's some other guys that want out, maybe a Bradley Beal that could be obtainable. Just saying, that's what I would do. But whatever we do, man, I got confidence, and I'm looking forward to next season.
Yeah, no. So it's funny, actually. Everyone I think mentions Bradley Beal, and whenever I hear Bradley Beal's interviews, he always is so invested in the Washington Wizards. It's just interesting to me because I don't really. And look, I get that he's trying to build the team up. I actually respect that, but I'm also in the sense. I prefer guys to stay there and stick it out and try to build a franchise up. But when it's kind of a lost cause, I think, you have the right as a player to move on. I think you brought up a good point about the East, though. And me, I did take pleasure in it. I know we talked about it, but about the Nets, I think the Nets chemistry has been a disaster. I really think Kevin Durant and Kyrie made big mistakes. Their teams are doing better without them. Do I think that's going to hurt and tarnish KD's legacy? Not really. I think KD's a set in stone player. I think a lot of guys are looking way too much into it, but I think the thing is too is look, the Bucks didn't have Chris Middleton in that Boston series. Took them to 7 games, right? So Chris Middleton's a huge piece because he relieves stress. He can off of Giannis. Giannis literally had to do everything in that series. But I think people need to, look, obviously Boston's really good, right? And I think Philly's going to be all right. I think, Joel Embiid's great, but, he can't stay healthy all the time, which is just a problem. And Harden, I don't know. I really am just really down on Harden. I mean, a lot of people are saying, and I'll ask you this, actually, this is a good segue. There are people that think Harden deserves the Supermax, right? I'm not saying Harden doesn't deserve to get paid this offseason. I think that's ridiculous. I just don't think he deserved the Supermax after he put up 8 points in the final game against the Heat. Now the Heat have one of the best defenses in the league. Credit to them. But Harden was average in the league in terms of blow-by rate. He looked slower. He just did not look very good. Maybe it was his hamstring. I don't know. But he looked considerably worse compared to what he was in Houston, even for part of the year with Brooklyn before the injury. So what are your thoughts on, I guess, the East overall, and maybe even that question with James Harden and the Supermax a little bit?
Yeah, tackling that first part of the question, I mean, that the East is scary, bro. The East is scary. We're loaded. I think it's better than the West now. I think it's totally flipped. And I mean, the Nets this year, they were a mess. They were an absolute mess. But another year in that system, now they don't have James Harden. There was a little bit of turmoil there. And KD and Kyrie, they might be able to start clicking. Their bench, if they can they need a rim protector so bad. But if they can acquire some pieces in the offseason, I mean, with those two players, as skilled as they are, there's no limit to where they could go. You mentioned the Bucks didn't even have Chris Middleton, went to Game 7. Giannis had to carry that whole team on his back, and they almost pulled it off. Obviously, the Celtics are the Celtics. And then going to the Sixers, I didn't even mention the Sixers because I don't think James Harden is the guy anymore. Obviously, 3 years ago, James Harden was a prolific scorer. And his defense, I always thought that James Harden's defense was a bit underrated. When he was engaged on the defensive end, he could hold his own. He wasn't an elite defender, but he could hold his own. Sometimes he would lose sight of things and kind of get lost in the game. But when he was engaged and he needed to get a stop, he was okay. He was okay. But now, I mean, you mentioned it, man. That first step just doesn't seem to be there. His confidence kind of, I don't, to take 2 shots in an elimination game in the second half, that just doesn't, that's not James Harden. Like, that's not James Harden at all. So I personally would not offer him a Supermax. I would pay him. I would keep him on the team. I still think he's a valuable guy, another veteran in the league. He knows how to score, especially with someone like Maxey, someone that you could see, like Maxey can really develop into a star in this league. I think he's been showing it last season and last postseason, this entire regular season, and then this week, the Miami Heat had trouble stopping him in some games. He was going out there getting 20, 25, and I was a little worried about him. So I think even keeping him to mentor Maxey, to have him become his true form, that's valuable in and of itself. But a Supermax, I don't see it, just because Harden's not the guy that you can count on to show up training camp in the best shape of his life. He's not that guy. It's not who he's ever been. He's had plenty of success being who he is, but that's just not who he is. So I think I would pay him, keep him on the roster, but a Supermax is just a bit out of the turn for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think also one thing I think has been really shown heavily in the playoffs, this is going to be a good segue into I was talking about the finals, is coaching. I think coaching makes a huge difference. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that because of how talented players are. And look, the NBA guys have a lot more control over the team than the coaches do because they get paid more. And they exert a lot of influence on social media. They exert a lot of influence in the media, right? And whether that's good or bad, it's just how it is, right? And I think a lot of times people think just because you have talent, you're going to be able to win an NBA championship. And I think really coaching has proven to be the catalyst. I mean, I think Doc Rivers is not a bad coach, right? But I don't think he's an elite level coach like a Spoelstra, like that. Just because I look at the offense and it gets a little stagnant sometimes in Philly. I do think he's a better coach than people give him credit for, because I think that he did motivate Joel Embiid to become more in shape. I think in terms of getting guys developed, he's very good at that. I just think X's and O's, he gets a little stagnant offensively. But I look at Spoelstra, right? Their ball movement is unbelievable, right? Spoelstra, I think, having to inherit that big three with LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh, and the growth he's done as a coach since then. I mean, he's arguably the best coach in the league, arguably, right? I would put him and Steve Kerr probably in that class of best coaches in the league right now. And then you look at Kerr, obviously, great coach. You look at Ime Udoka, looks like he's going to be a fantastic head coach in this league. And the East across the board, I mean, Budenholzer is a decent coach. I really think that's a case of you have Giannis and Middleton and Drew Holiday, and that kind of works out. Yep. But I do think coaching has proven to be a big catalyst in the playoffs. And I was wondering, at least this is a segue to the finals. What did you see, I guess, from that game? Because obviously we're basketball guys. We can kind of break it down a little bit more for people who don't watch the game or, play it like we do. But what did you see, I guess, from Boston that allowed them to get that huge advantage in the fourth quarter? I mean, was there anything specifically you saw in defensively or offensively that, you looked at and said that was just something they can carry over and win the series with?
Yeah. I would point it to just, and this isn't really the most basketball analytical take, but they were just sticking with it. And I think I remember I was watching the game, and in the first quarter, Curry, he shoots 6 for 7 from 3. He had like 21 in the first quarter. He's going off, you know what I mean? Just having a Stephen Curry type of night. And Boston's only down 4. And I remember seeing that. I'm like, oh, the Boston, like they're in a great spot. Like if you can withhold that run from Curry, 6 threes in a quarter, finals record, I think, at least for game 1, and you're only down 4 points, that in and of itself says something. And I think they really just stuck with it. And to be honest, the Warriors looked gassed. They really did. I mean, some of their role players, I mean, you look at Poole, what he had, I believe 9 points. He shot like 2 for 7. Just an off game from him. And I think he'll bounce back. He's proven all playoffs this year that he's an elite player. If not their second option, definitely their third option as a scorer. But he had an off night. Klay Thompson played okay, but he's not pre-injury Klay Thompson. Simple as that. At least that's not what I've seen from this playoffs. And I think Boston just really stuck with it. They have some role players. Derek White has been absolutely killing it this playoffs. He destroyed us on the Heat. It was so frustrating watching him score 20 points because we were trying to shut down Tatum and Brown and Smart. And then this guy named Derek White goes off for 25. And you're just like, bro, and then of course, Big Al, man, 35 years old, going out there and just playing his heart out. First NBA finals. I love to see it. I'm so happy for him. What is it? Like he has like 141 games of 141 playoff games and no finals appearances.
Yeah,
he goes out something like that, a record, goes out in his first game and absolutely kills it. I'm so happy for him. I think it's just the depth of Boston. I think the depth just, and that's not saying that the Warriors can't compete with that because obviously they're the Warriors, but I think at the end of the day, the Warriors looked gassed and Boston came out. They came out well. They didn't come out as hot as Curry and them, but they just stuck with it all game. And then by the end of it, they just had more to give, and it showed in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I think that's a good take. I think something I wanted to ask you about too. So I guess when I look at the Celtics, I picked them actually to win in 7, which is a minority pick. Obviously, a lot of people pick the Warriors, right?
I picked them in 7 as well.
So the reason I picked them, I think their length defensively is something the Warriors haven't experienced in the playoffs. And I think the second point is the Warriors have played against teams who've had really only one star, if you think about it, right? Jokic, Morant, Luka. Boston's got 2 legit stars and a bunch of good role players. I just think that they can combat runs that the Warriors throw at them. I think also that's approved. Robert Williams, Al Horford, any way they want to go defensively, they can figure it out. But you have to give, the Warriors are going to, I think, readjust and win tonight. But I guess, what do you think about, I guess, the defensive length of the Celtics? Do you think like me that's going to play a key role for the rest of the series on guys like Steph and Clay and Poole? Or do you think Draymond is going to have to step up more offensively as a scorer? Just like those kind of questions, I guess.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think once again you hit the nail on the head. The Warriors haven't seen someone like this in the playoffs, at least defensively. I really like your take on the one star that they faced in each series. The Nuggets, obviously, they had Jokic. They were injured. There was nothing. The fact that they got there, I think, was pretty impressive, at least where they were in the seedings. And then if you look at the Memphis series, I think if Ja didn't get hurt, that would have been a very interesting series. Now you can argue that Memphis plays just as well without Ja Morant, which is absolutely crazy. But Memphis is another team that is pretty deep. Now they only have one star, like one superstar, and that is Ja Morant. But they got Bane, Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks. Obviously, he had that play that kept them out a couple games. But they're another team that can really they have multiple guys that can give you 15 to 20 points a night, and they kind of struggled with that. It was their most intense series, at least until Ja Morant got hurt. And then you go to Luka, who obviously Luka had to carry that series, and I mean the Warriors went up 3-0 pretty easy. But you go back to the Celtics. I mean, they got guys on guys that can just play elite level defense, and they are really long. They are all 6'7" wings. I mean, you got Brown, who's an elite defender, Tatum, who has really increased or has really gotten better defensively throughout his career. And I think a key thing about the Celtics is while they have their Robert Williams, who can just defend the paint and really shut down Kevon Looney, like Robert Williams shut down Bam Adebayo in the Heat series. They can go small ball too. They really can, because they can throw Grant Williams in at the 5 and counteract the small ball that the Warriors kind of created way back when they threw in Draymond Green at the 5. So they're just a very versatile defense. They can give you length, they can give you small ball, they can give you fast pace, they can give you half court defense. So they're just all around defensively just a very strong team. That's what the Heat struggled with. Other than Jimmy Butler, there was no other guy that was giving us more than 12 on a consistent basis. Bam gave us a couple 20-point games, but other than that, it was a struggle fest. So I think you covered it pretty well, though. I mean, I think the Warriors, like you said, I do believe the Warriors will bounce back. I have them winning tonight, but I think throughout the series, it's going to prove that the Warriors are going to have to make some adjustments and really get used to this team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I was also thinking about the fact that, in the West, I was completely wrong when it came to, I guess, who was going to be in the Western Conference Finals.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Phoenix was going to be there, right? I think most people thought Phoenix was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, look, I root for the younger guys in the NBA. I root for guys like Luka, Booker. Obviously you have Tatum and Brown right now, Jordan Poole, because that's the future of the NBA, right? You want to see that happen. I was shocked in Game 7 about how they performed. Shocked. I mean, you're losing by like 50 to the Mavs, and you're at home. I mean, I thought they came out very lethargic. I thought that their defensive game plan on Lucas, the switching with Ayton was a disastrous move, because you're putting, even though Ayton I think can move his feet well, Luka's just too smart and too skilled. He's just going to find a way to score. And the Warriors, I thought, did a good job of just wearing him out, but no one really can stop him. He more can stop himself. That's why I think he needs to get in a little bit better shape so he can withstand that a little bit better. But 100%. I don't know, what do you think the future of the Suns is? I know it's a different topic. I know we didn't think about this earlier, but when we were talking about that, I was just thinking about the fact that they just blew that series. Obviously, you have to give Dallas credit for their small ball and their adjustments.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm a little worried about the future of it, just because Chris Paul looks older. And I know Booker's great, but Booker did not play well in those last 2 games. Ever since he released the Luka special, he didn't play well. It kind of reminded me of Klay Thompson back in 2016 with LeBron. But without regard to that, I just want to ask you, what do you think the future of the Suns is? Because you have the Nuggets, you have the Clippers, you got the Warriors next year, the Mavs are going to be better, the Grizzlies. I mean, I don't know if the Suns can get. I mean, I think the Suns can be contenders. I just don't think they're going to be NBA Finals team unless Booker and Ayton take that next step.
Yeah, no, I love the NBA right now. I absolutely love it, because you just listed off 5 teams in the West that are just so much fun to watch, and they're so young. I mean, it's just awesome. The NBA is amazing right now. But regarding the Suns, man, I think Ayton has to take the next step. Watching that Mavs series, when the Mavs went small ball, there was no one on the court that should have been able to stop DeAndre Ayton from just going down there and absolutely dominating around the basket. There was no one. I mean, even like Dwight Powell. I mean, DeAndre Ayton should eat his lunch. It's just not even a question. And I know he's a young player. It's what, his third, fourth year? I forget. But he's still
I think
relatively
fourth
young.
year,
He
but
has
yeah.
time to, yeah, he has time to take that next step. But when you're in a game seven like that, I mean, it's go time. That's the biggest moment. Everyone's watching that game. Everyone's looking for you to step up, and they just didn't do it. I think Devin Booker is a heck of a player. I think he can lead a team to a championship. I think he proved that last year. They were pretty close to defeating the Bucks. The Bucks, I think, were just better, just more. They were just had a better squad, especially with Giannis playing like that. I don't think anyone is going to beat him. But but I think Devin Booker. I think Devin Booker can do it. Chris Paul, he's interesting. He's one of the greatest point guards of all time. Got to give him his roses, but I mean, his age is starting to show. Man, he can go out there and he can hoop, give you 20 and 10, but he can also go out there and be an absolute no show. And that, like, as a starting point guard, getting so much, like, getting paid what he is getting paid, I mean, you just got to be a bit more consistent. I mean, even if like the highs aren't as high, but as long as the lows aren't as low, I think that's going to be a huge step for them. But they got some good pieces, man. I think when it came down to the Mavs game, I think you hit it. Like, I think you nailed it. DeAndre Ayton just could not guard Luka Doncic. He couldn't. I think when you have a defensive prowess like Mikal Bridges, I think Mikal Bridges is one of the best 3-and-D guys, definitely the best defender on that team. You got to keep him on Luka. Whatever, like, you gotta do what you can, because Ayton was getting torched.
Yeah.
The only big I've seen guard Luka somewhat consistently is Kevon Looney. And that's why the Warriors were able to win that series, because every time Kevon Looney switched on, Luka had trouble. I don't know what it is. He was just something about his length and his quickness and his agility was able to.
I think it's more just the intelligence standpoint. I'm not saying Ayton's a smart player. I just think that Kevon Looney's been through. He plays with guys like Draymond. I just think that kind of made a difference.
That's a great point. And he's been in the league longer, obviously. And I think the Warriors system is just a bit more established and a bit more, like, it's just probably better than the Suns. I still think the Suns can be contenders. I don't think they'll be favorites, especially with the Warriors looking the way they are.
Right.
The Suns is even tougher than, like, let's say the Heat, because if you keep that Suns team the way it is right now, I don't think they can make the championship at all.
No, I don't either.
So they would either have to get rid of Chris Paul, which I don't think would be a terrible thing. I mean, he's a great player. I think they could trade him to a lower organization that would love him and absolutely adore him, and they could get some valuable assets back, whether that's draft capital, getting rid of that contract, or just another good player. And I think DeAndre Ayton can take the next step. I think Booker is pretty much what he's going to be, which is a great player. But if DeAndre Ayton takes the next step and they have that, like, elite shooting guard and elite center, I think they can make a run. I don't know they would be favorites, but I think the future is still bright. It's not like over for the Suns, anything like that.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things I have issues with the Suns. One is, look, this is not a shade at Chris Paul, the great player he is. His playoff resume, unfortunately, is not great. He doesn't come up big in big moments. Game 6 against the Clippers last year and the Pelican series this year, he played great, but he did run out of gas. I think Alvarado actually had a huge thing to do with that, actually, to be honest. I really think that made a difference. But, I mean, you're just going to look at the notable playoff losses where he's been up 2-0 and lost it. It's just that doesn't look good. I'm not saying Chris Paul's at fault for all those series, because as I kind of hate when people say it's one guy's fault for losing a series, when in basketball, as we know, it's a team game, right? So that's my first issue. I think the second thing I have, and obviously, when you're in a competitive fire, you talk trash or anything like that, right? But I think the front running they have is a little bit of a problem for me. I think that they start talking trash when they're winning games, and then you have Luka saying everyone acting tough when they up.
Exactly.
And I knew the series was over after that point, because I think look, I love Booker's competitive fire. I just think sometimes young players, especially if I felt victim to this. Obviously, you've been around and you know this. Like, it's just you talk trash, and sometimes you inspire a guy in the wrong direction who's a little bit of a crazy competitor.
Yeah.
I think that's just something that I looked at. But I guess what other I guess NBA stuff are you more interested in looking at? I guess, but for me, I'm really excited to see what the Nuggets look like next year.
Yes.
because they get Murray back, they get Porter Jr. back with Jokic. Look, I know people are angry about Embiid not winning MVP. I would have picked Embiid to win MVP, but Jokic winning is, I don't think is that big of a deal. Like I think people were like, that was a big mistake. I'm like, he had a great year and he played well in the playoffs. I mean, he averaged 30 points a game against that Warriors team. So I guess that's where I want to end it. What are you looking forward to besides maybe your Miami Heat? Like, what other things are you looking forward to? What are you excited about there?
Yeah, of course. Then Heat fan all the way, baby. 20. No, but I think the Nuggets are going to be they're going to be very interesting to watch because Jamal Murray in the bubble was different. He was a different animal. I remember the Utah Jazz Nuggets series. He was averaging like 40 points. Like he's a legit player in this league. And I think people forget it with every player whenever they get hurt. But especially with Jamal Murray, he's really gonna add something to that Nuggets team. You mentioned Michael Porter Jr. He's gonna be a nice third piece, and I think Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon is like, if he's the fourth option, I think he struggled this year, but he was the second option on that team. If he's the third or fourth option, I think he could really try. He could be like an Andrew Wiggins on the Warriors. Really take the right type of shots, contribute. He could give you 20 a game. He's athletic enough. He's skilled enough. And he could be a very efficient player, and he could play good defense. But with that core four of Murray, MPJ, Jokic, and Gordon, they could really do something. And so I'm very excited to see them going. I mean, like you said, I'm excited to see Memphis next year. I think John Morant is just going to continue to get better and better. I'm excited to see Desmond Bain. I think he can even continue to improve. And I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is ready to take the next step too. I watched him in the playoffs, especially without John Morant. And he's young. He made some like key mistakes, especially down the stretch. But I mean, that's what young players do. You know what I mean? He's going to learn. He's going to continue to get better and better. So I think Memphis is going to be very tough as well. Yeah, I mean, it's just a good time to be an NBA fan right now. There's so many young players, so many players, even under 25, that are just elite, looking to make their name. And yeah, I'm excited for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, and really appreciate all the insight you have, and obviously looking forward to the Heat's future. It'll be exciting to see. Hopefully my Knicks can at least get into a play-in next year. Probably not, but we'll see. but thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Hey, who you got tonight?
I told you Warriors.
You got the Warriors? All right, cool. And we got Celtics. We both got Celtics in 7. Both got Warriors tonight.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes,
Great minds think alike, brother.
Yeah, trying our best out here. All right, buddy.
All right, cool. Thank you.